Right now, you're wearing clothes, obviously, but think about the last time you got dressed and actually thought about why you were doing it. You didn't. You just did it. Automatically. And here's the strange part. Humans are the only species on Earth that does this. No fur, no built-in insulation, nothing. Just naked apes covering themselves in other animals' skins. This habit is older than farming, older than pottery, older than most of the tools we consider ancient. The question is, when did we lose the fur that every other mammal relies on, and how did we figure out we needed to replace it? Let's go back. Way back. About 2 million years ago, something strange happened to our ancestors. They started losing their body hair. This is bizarre if you think about it. Every mammal that lives outside, lions, wolves, bears, keeps a thick coat for protection. But early Homo erectus was walking around the African savanna essentially bald. Scientists think this happened because our ancestors started hunting in the heat of the day, chasing prey over long distances until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. It's called persistence hunting, and it required serious cooling. Fur traps heat. Bear's sweaty skin releases it, so losing hair made us better hunters. But it created a massive new problem. Once the sun went down, or once you moved somewhere colder, that same bare skin that kept you cool during the day left you completely exposed at night. Here's what makes this so important. For a while, that wasn't survivable outside of Africa. Humans were stuck, trapped in warm climates because their bodies simply weren't built for anything else. Something had to change. Here's where the story gets weirder and where scientists found evidence in the last place you'd expect. Parasites. Humans have two types of lice. Head lice, which live in your hair, and body lice, which live in clothing. Body lice can only survive if there's fabric to hide in. They can't live on bare skin. A team led by biologist Mark Stoneking studied the DNA of these two louse species to figure out when they split into separate species. If body lice needed clothing to exist, then the moment they evolved was roughly the moment humans started wearing something. Their estimate, somewhere between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. Think about that. Scientists figured out when we started wearing clothes by studying bugs that live in them. That's not a joke. That's real published research. So around 100,000 years ago-ish, something changed. But what were these clothes exactly? Not jackets, not fabric, skins. Archaeologists have found stone tools called scrapers dating back over 300,000 years, designed specifically for cleaning hides, removing fat and flesh from animal skin so it wouldn't rot. That's older than the louse evidence, which tells us something important. Humans were processing hides long before they were fully wearing them the way we think of clothing today. At first, this was probably just draping. Throw a hide over your shoulders. Basic, functional, ugly, honestly. But then came a discovery that changed everything. Around 40,000 years ago, someone did something that seems small but was actually revolutionary. They invented the sewing needle. Archaeologists found a needle made from bone at Denisova Cave in Siberia, dated to roughly 50,000 years old. And similar needles started popping up across Europe and Asia not long after. These weren't crude tools. They had tiny drilled eyes, just like a modern sewing needle. Fine enough to pull sinew thread through animal hide. That means humans weren't just wearing hides anymore. They were fitting them, tailoring them to the body. And that changes everything, because a draped hide keeps you warmish. A fitted sewn garment keeps you alive in an ice age. Here's the stakes. This invention lines up almost exactly with humans successfully pushing into Siberia and eventually crossing into the Arctic and the Americas, places that would kill an unclothed human in under an hour. Without the needle, there's a real argument that humans never leave Africa in any serious numbers. No spreading across Europe, no surviving the last ice age, no crossing into North America. One tiny bone tool, global consequences. Fast forward past the Ice Age, and something interesting happens. Clothing stops being purely functional. At sites in Russia, dating back roughly 30,000 years, archaeologists found human burials, including the famous Sungir burial, where the bodies were covered in thousands of tiny ivory beads, arranged in patterns that clearly once decorated clothing that has long since rotted away. Researchers estimate it would have taken thousands of hours to make those beads. Thousands of hours for decoration on an outfit That's the moment clothing becomes about more than temperature. It becomes about identity, status, who you are, and where you stand in the group. Same instinct, by the way, that makes you care what you're wearing to a job interview or on a first date. Yeah, that anxiety is 30,000 years old. Cool, right? For most of human history, clothing meant animal skins. But around 7,000 to 10,000 years ago, as humans started farming, a second revolution happened. Woven textiles, flax fibers found at a site called Dzudzuana Cave in Georgia, the country, not the state, were dated to around 34,000 years old. Some of the oldest known plant fibers possibly used for cordage or textiles. And once agriculture kicked in properly, cultivated flax and domesticated sheep gave humans a steady renewable material supply. No more relying on hunting for every hide. This is the point where clothing stops being tied to killing an animal and starts being tied to growing a crop or raising livestock. Production, trade, economy, which, if you zoom out, is the actual foundation of how societies scaled up. Textile trade routes, marketplaces, entire economies built on cloth. That hoodie in your closet has a direct, unbroken lineage back to sheep, flax fields, and Ice Age needles. So why didn't we just stay naked once we invented shelter and fire? Because clothing does something fire, and shelter can't. It's mobile insulation, it's identity, it's status. It's protection from sun, thorns, insects, weather, all at once, wrapped around your body wherever you go. Once humans discovered they could carry their environment with them, there was no going back. So here's the full picture. 2 million years ago, we lost our fur to become better hunters. A few 100,000 years ago, we started scraping hides just to survive the cold. Somewhere around 100,000 years ago, according to actual lice DNA, we started wearing those hides regularly. 40,000 years ago, a tiny bone needle let us tailor those hides, and that single invention may have unlocked the entire planet for human migration. 30,000 years ago, clothing stopped being about survival and started being about identity. And 10,000 years ago, farming turned clothing into an economy that still runs the world today. So next time you get dressed in the morning without thinking twice about it, remember, you're doing something that helped your ancestors survive an ice age, migrate across continents, and build the first version of what we'd now call fashion. It's not just fabric. It's 2 million years of figuring out how to survive as a hairless ape on a planet that really would rather you didn't. If you found this as strange and fascinating as I did, there's a lot more of this kind of thing here. Stick around.